Welcome to Beyond the Walls, a podcast for women ready to break barriers and step boldly into their purpose. I'm Kylie, your coach and guide for overcoming fear, silencing self-doubt, and building a life of courage and connection. Whether faith is your anchor or you're still trying to figure it out, this is a space for growth, authenticity, and transformation. Subscribe now and let's start building the courage to be seen, heard, and unstoppable. This is Beyond the Walls, where your purpose begins. Do you really want deeper connections? This last couple of episodes that I've been putting out have been all about meaningful connections, hospitality, our personal relationships, our relationship with our faith and our faith community, and being able to talk about our intentionality with work and rest. So many of those things boil down to our willingness to really own what we're actually doing. Does it align with what we actually want? And are we actually producing the fruit in our lives that we really want? Or are we just living life as it comes to us and sort of stuck in that reactive space, that victim mentality, the I have no control over my life and it just is what it is? Or are we actually owning it? Do you really believe that you have a choice, that you have a say? And does it match, right? Like, does your life actually match what you really do want? And what is stopping you from letting it actually look like the life that you want if they don't match? Now, when you just kind of take stock of your life right now, how would you describe your relationships? Are you feeling just busy and hurried? Do you really feel like you do have close friends? Or maybe you did at one time, but they've grown distant and life has gotten in the way and you've kind of lost some of that connection. But we're still living off the fumes, right? Or the high of what was. But is it really still true today? Or does it need revived? Or maybe you've been in complete denial that you don't need it, you don't want it, and you're totally content with how life is. You know, a couple of years back, I was taking a course and they brought up the concept of being surrendered versus being resigned. And I think, gosh, you know, when I hear resignation or being resigned in some place, it feels like I've just given up. I've lowered my standard. I've just accepted what is. It is what it is, right? Like I'm willing to sacrifice, to settle, to expect and accept less than what really is what I really want, what is actually healthy and helpful and productive. Versus, you know, surrender. Surrender can be great strength and a very healthy place to sort of be at peace with where you end and somebody else begins, what's in your control and what's out of your control. There's this surrender of peace that passes understanding, right? Where we don't have to know all things and be in complete control to still be hopeful and be faithful and have no idea what's going to happen next, right? The only person I can control is myself. I cannot control all the other aspects of my life. And just controlling myself can be really hard sometimes, right? It takes so much self-control, so much intentionality, and sometimes it just gets exhausting, right? And so cutting ourselves some slack. This is not a shaming episode, right? None of my episodes are. None of these are to like walk away feeling defeated and confused and overwhelmed and just giving up, right? Like that is the opposite of what I hope for you. And I think so much of the work that I do here is about lowering that significance of what's actually happening, lowering the pressure, lowering the shame, lowering the judgment, while calling ourselves higher, while being honest with ourselves and with other people. So again, that brings me back to the question of, do you really want deeper connections? And so as you're listening to this and as we go through this series, I want you to keep this in the forefront of your mind to really to take ownership and to say, hey, you know what? I've just been pretending I wanted deeper relationships, or I've been pretending that I had them when I don't really have them. And I have all these excuses and all these reasons and all of these walls why I don't need it, I don't want it, or you've settled somehow and convinced yourself that it's as deep as it's going to get, but it's just not satisfying. And so if we take a look at if you really do want deeper relationships and you're willing to get curious about how it's actually going, what have you actually been doing, and you want to move forward, right? What I've been talking about a lot is in realms of hospitality, right? Of being able to actually invite people into your space, to serve other people, to show up for other people, and allow them to show up for you. Allow you to do something, to take action, to share your life in some way, to offer yourself, to let people know you're available. It takes a lot of intentionality. It takes some ownership. It takes some willingness to have hurt feelings, to be rejected, for it to not go well. There's so many things that put up barriers, right, into even doing it in the first place, but especially to do it again if it didn't go well. How many of you have invited somebody over to your home to just be rejected, to maybe just excuses why they couldn't, it falls through, they're too busy, you get it on the calendar, but then something else happens, right? Whether it's intentional or unintentional, it just doesn't seem to happen. Or they do come over and it's uncomfortable and it's awkward and you made a horrible meal. Maybe the dinner was a complete disaster, or you had other friends that were getting together and you weren't invited and you felt left out. And you're like, see, this is proof. They don't want to be with me, or they were with me before and it wasn't good enough and they don't want to do it again. There's so many things that come into our circumstances and our conversations in our head. There's reasons that we give ourselves as to why we've been rejected, we will be rejected, it's not worth the risk. Now, as you're considering some of those deeper emotional, right? Like that's at the end of the day, I think our ultimate fear is that we fear being rejected. We want to be loved and accepted, right? We want to be proved by other people as much as we try not to have it, right? If you've been around Beyond the Walls for a minute, you've heard me say that other people's acceptance is just icing on the cake. And I think we can't just eliminate that human nature about us. We were meant for community. And so we will always be impacted by other people and be encouraged when they're for us and be discouraged when they're against us. There is nothing we can do to eliminate that impacting us. But how much we let it impact us, how much we let it become our identity or be all that it's about is in our control. And that's where we go wrong. And so as we're thinking this through, the goal is not to eliminate rejection. The goal is not to eliminate anybody ever being disappointed or us being disappointed, but instead, where is it coming from? Out of my own love, respect, security, value, worth is the place to begin to start to serve other people, right? I think that is the missing key that flips it around. Why when we do serve other people and we make it you versus me, you're better than me, I'm going to sacrifice to prove that I'm less than. When we're serving other people to make them feel better by us being less, it's not going to satisfy us. And it doesn't feel good as the receiver of that. Like, how good does it feel when somebody wants to serve you and they're constantly telling you and convincing you that you're so much better than them? Do you want to be better than other people? Like, would you want to be served in that way, knowing that somebody is serving you because they are not worthy of being received? Like, they have to give to you because you're better than them? And so why would we want that reversed? We would never ask that of somebody else to do that to us. And so when we can put ourselves in those shoes, right, turn that story around and say, would that be comfortable for the other person to say that? Then that's the space for us to say, like, okay, yeah, we're off. This isn't coming from health. This isn't actually making me more humble. This doesn't actually make me more authentic to tear ourselves down in order to build others up. And so as we're assessing, I want you to ask yourselves and get really honest with baseline, do you want connection? And if the answer is yes, then let's go through some ways that we can approach and get strong. I want you to think through what you've been doing, right? How have you been showing up to the world? Whether it's your closest friends to your extended family members, like what are the circles, the communities, groups of people that you're already a part of? If somebody else were to ask them about you, what do you think they would say? Would they say, yeah, she's somebody who really wants to be connected. She's an active member of this group. I feel like she wants to be here. Or would they feel like, boy, I don't know, she's pretty guarded and closed off, and I guess she comes when she wants to, and but I don't really feel close to her. And I want you to be able to start owning that, not to guilt trip yourself into it, not to shame yourself, but to get curious and look at what the wall is then. There is some kind of a wall that is up in those circumstances that is preventing you from showing up authentic, that's preventing you from showing up in a way that allows you to truly be connected, to be seen and heard by somebody else. And it prevents you from honest connection with others. I think it's really hard for it to be a one-way street for people. They don't want to feel like the person who's always just doing the receiving. I mean, sometimes we're really selfish and we're immature, and it does feel good, and it is all about us. And at some point, we're going to have to wake up and figure out, like, it's not satisfying any longer. And so if that's someone that's you that feels like, gosh, I feel like it's always about me, and I'm really good at asking for help, and I'm the only one that ever asks for help, but nobody ever asks me for help. I want you to consider in that area then, what is preventing you from showing up and sacrificing and serving other people out of your strength, out of your own confidence in who you are, out of your own belief in your value system. Wanting deeper connections is agreeing to deeper connections going both ways. It doesn't work one way. And to be able to be available to give to other people means that you're also available to receive. And so I want you to consider that if you are feeling not connected, and especially if you feel like I don't need connection, I want you to really consider then, maybe the first step is to think about, who are you serving? Who gets to receive your strengths and your gifts and your talents? Whose world are you making better because you are in it? Right? You may not feel like you need the support, but then that means that you're not supporting other people either. And if you're the person who's the other extreme, that's like, I'm only here to help other people and nobody looks to my needs. Nobody is offering me services. Nobody's here for me. I'm always there for them. Then the same question goes for you as well, of what is that wall then that is preventing you from showing up honest and vulnerable? When we look at how we're actually showing up, this is where we get to be really practical and logistical, right? When it looks at, like, okay, in our faith community, are you actually reading your Bible? Are you actually praying and sharing your heart with God? Are you actually going to service, or do you watch it online by yourself in your home and that's all you do? How is that like engaging with the word? How is that engaging with the community? How are people able to serve you, and how are you able to serve them in that situation? When it looks at our work and our rest, right? Is there a holistic approach, or is it all just, I'm just here for work and I'm going to work myself to death to meet this accomplishment or this goal that I have? what is the impact on my real life, and vice versa. I just watched this documentary about Martha Stewart. It was on Netflix. It's really intense. She's a really hardcore lady. And middle of the episode, the interviewer asked, because she was married, she got divorced, and even throughout the whole thing, she doesn't have a lot of close friends. She was super rude and hard to work with. She was very demanding on people. And so she didn't have a lot of deep connections and trust with people. And yet she's so famous, had so many people around her all the time. But the interviewer asked her, what's more important, marriage or career? And she couldn't answer. And she looked really sad. Like she looked like she wanted to say maybe marriage, but she also was like, but career is really important and I can't pick one or the other. And I feel like, at the end of the day, she kind of failed at both. I mean, although she outwardly, financially, she built an empire, right? Like she certainly succeeded in career, but I'm not sure that there was real deep satisfaction in it. Besides always trying to get to the next level, like what's next and what's happening for me, right? Because all of her efforts were in that. Like if that was the only thing she was looking for, but she missed out on the relationships and the people. And I think so many times in life, we make it a this or that, all of this or none of that. And that's so often in our relationships where it's either all about you or it's all about me. And I think, how can we really start to feel secure and confident that I am asked to look not only to my own interest, but to yours also? And the more secure we are, the more we are serving out of our strength and not our lack, the more that we get to show up because we are worthy, because we are loved, the more we get to show up and to sacrifice, to do for others, to help other people, to ask for help, to engage differently than the way it has been before. If we don't see the lack of connection that we're experiencing right now in the ways that we're showing up in life, then there's no reason to change to make deeper connections. If you don't really believe there's a problem right now, there's nothing to change besides just shame and guilt and obligation. Someone's telling you, you're listening to this podcast and I'm challenging you to have deeper connections, right? Like if you don't actually see a problem, then it's only going to be changed by people pleasing. And so you may not really have a problem. You might be totally fine with where you are. And if you are, then there's still room to tweak. There's still room to grow. There's still room that in this season, you have what you need, but there will be a season coming that you are going to be called higher. You're going to be stretched. And whether that's in allowing people to help you, serve you, let people in, or it's going to be you being called where someone's going to need of you. Out of that strength, that wisdom, the security that you have, somebody is going to need what only you can give. Will you be willing to answer the call? Will you be available emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually to show up and play a part in making somebody else's life better? Will you allow other people to show up for you to make your life better? I think part of even assessing all of this is also being able to look at your actual season right now, not like, oh yeah, I used to do that all the time. Like that's who I was. And we're still holding on to those warm and fuzzies. But if we put a date on it, gosh, that was 10 years ago, that's what my life looked like. Or I had this core group of people, right? I've moved, I for myself, I have moved so many times throughout the years. And so it's really easy to feel like, yeah, I have all kinds of best friends. I have great deep relationships. I can just call them up. We don't see each other all the time, but anytime I need something specific, I know I can call this one friend. She knows exactly what I am like. She knows my strengths and weaknesses. There's this automatic trust and openness and vulnerability. But how am I helping the people in my new town? How am I helping people in life right now? How about new people that come into our circle, new family members, new community members into our faith community, new people at work, new people in the neighborhood, right? Are we looking to help other people feel connected if we feel like we have all we need? What if we're needed outside of our group? And what if actually we really do need something that they have to offer too? And so there's so much value in, looking at the past, what worked well, what didn't work well, and how is it either hindering you or helping you in what you're currently trying to build right now? Because I think a lot of times we look back on our past hurts, the times that we've been disappointed, the times that we disappointed other people, right? It might be out of our own, we weren't good enoughs feeling back then. And it might be out of like, they didn't want what I had. They rejected me. They criticized me. They left me. I wasn't good enough. And how much of that is taking and playing a role in your life right now, in the relationships that you're in right now? How much are you holding what was against the people that are in your life right now that have nothing to do with those situations, right? Like, I have sexual abuse in my past. I have terrible dating relationships and romantic relationships in my past, and even friendships that have gone terribly wrong. But the people in my life right now, those are not the same people. Like, how unfair is that for me to hold these ghosts from my past against the people in my present, let alone the people that are going to be there in our future? What are we building today for the future? Where are we trying to go? And I think I love the baby step, and that's all I want for you right now, is to first assess, do you really want deeper connections? And if so, do you have them right now, or is there something to change right now? Where do you need to go deeper? How do you need to go deeper? What is another way that you can do it that you hadn't thought about? Because we have all these automatic ideas, like we already know what the problem is, we know whose problem it is, and we know what the solution should be. But if it's not working, maybe it's time to reassess. How could we look at the situation a little bit differently? What else could be possible? What am I missing out on by not going deeper in these areas? Who is missing out on something that only I can offer because I'm so focused and guarded on myself? Are we too busy? Are we walled up because of fear? What are you afraid of? What are you so busy with? Is it the past hurts? Maybe it's unrealistic expectations, right? I remember that there were times when I feel like I want to talk to a friend, but in my mind, I'm like, well, it's going to be pointless, especially if it's a friend that lives far away that I don't get to talk to very often. I'm like, I can't talk to this person unless I have 45 minutes. The amount of time that goes by for us to have 40 minutes available in both of our schedules is nearly impossible sometimes. Every once in a while, you get that magical moment where they answer and they just happen to be available. That's my favorite. But if I only call people when I have 45 minutes available, it rarely happens. And sometimes we just have to be willing to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go talk to that person for the 10 minutes that they have. 10 minutes once in a while is better than no time talking to them for months at a time, turns into years at a time, because we're waiting for this ideal amount of time to be available. And so looking at your expectations, what are you actually expecting of people in your faith community? What are you expecting from the people at church? What are you expecting from your coworkers? What are you expecting from your family members? Is it even a known expectation? You know, so many times I feel like we get so messed up in just a misunderstanding or even a lack of understanding. We never even communicated these expectations. How would this other person even know? I remember talking with a friend and she was so discouraged and so hurt. And from my perspective, we weren't necessarily in the same circle of people. I loved spending time with her when we did, but she wasn't in my mind. She wasn't in my I don't know, top 5 people. Like the people that I was actively and intentionally trying to build with and to serve and to show up for and to help. She wasn't in that top 5. And I didn't think she was I didn't think I was in her top 5, but we had a conversation one day and I was blown away. Like she was so hurt and discouraged because she saw me as the top 5. And I was like, I had no idea. How does that kind of misunderstanding, like had I known that I was that important to her, I would have showed up differently. I would have then brought her into my top 5, or we would have been able to say like that's not going to happen, right? And it's not because there were no ill intentions. It was just an optional relationship, right? I would have not had any problem being closer to this woman, but I had no idea that that was something she desired. And I was like, how does that happen? So I ask you this: the people that you really want attention from, that you really want to feel like they care about you, they're invested in you, do you think they actually know that that's what you want from them? Have you told them that? Have you expressed that in any way? Have you poured into them expecting and wanting this kind of relationship? And if yes, and you still don't feel like you have that connection, have you ever talked about it? Have you ever sat down and defined the relationship? Have you ever asked them if they're available to be your deep, close friend? Are they available to be in your top 5? Would they be willing to grow and be in your top 5? One of the best pieces of advice that I got early on, I was in my 20s and I was looking for a mentor in my faith community. And there was a woman that I knew her from afar, but I just felt like I admired her from afar. I respected her. I thought she was super cool. And I was like, I would really love to get to know this woman more and have her help me. I think she could help me grow in a lot of ways. And I remember getting coffee with her one time. Finally, even I, as the extroverted, totally secure and advocating for myself, outspoken person that I am, I still get intimidated. I still get afraid. And so I finally got her to meet with me for coffee one night. And I was asking her, and I think I started with all this apology, right? Like, I know you're probably too busy and it's totally okay if you can't, but I would really love it if we could meet on a regular basis. And her response to me, which I loved so much and I hold dearly to me today, is first, one, she was willing, so that was cool. She was like, yes, I totally would. But her follow-up was, don't ever decide for other people what they are or are not willing to do. I basically put it off for so long, and I kind of was sharing that with her, right? Like, I've been wanting to reach out to you for months and I just haven't, right? And her response is like, why would you wait so long to reach out to me to ask me this question? Like, only I get to decide if I'm too busy, if it's not a good time, if I'm available or not. And so I hope that you're hearing in that, right? How easily we decide for other people that they're too busy. You don't want to be a burden. You will be a burden, obviously, right? That's the natural implication, I think, to that. When we decide for other people that we would be bothering them, we are telling ourselves that we are bothersome. And so is that the leading reason why you're not having deeper relationships or deeper connections with people? Have you decided that you're too much, you're not worthy, you're not enough to be worth somebody else's time? Or it would be such a burden, such a sacrifice that they would never want to do that. Is that why you don't have deeper connections? Giving the other people the freedom to say yes or no, although is very scary, is so powerful. And I want you to know that if you did ask somebody, right, in the examples that I gave, like, I want you to be in my like top 5 people. Are you willing? Are you available? Would you like that? If they say no, I want you to download my freebie. I will put it in the show notes. It's called Unlocking Relationship Security. And it will prompt you through, give you a couple of tools to grow in security and confidence when you feel that rejection. Because what I want you to know most is that it is not a rejection of you and your being. Let it mean more about them than it does about you. I hope you hear that. They need something. Whether it's they're not available, they have something going on in their world that they can't. It might be pure rejection of you. They don't like you. They don't want to. You would be a burden. You're exhausting to them. That still says something about them. That shares something in their self-security and their confidence and their judgment. Like, I don't know that I would really want that person in my top 5 if that's how they really felt about me, right? So it's kind of a win-win. Like, we don't want anybody to be in our top 5 against their will. I want you to genuinely want to be there with me. And I want to genuinely be able to be there with you. You know, this last year, I would say, it's been a really hard one for friendships. I feel like in my personal life, it has just been my family members, the things that we've had to go through. It's been a storm. It's been a wrestling. It's been a wilderness era. And I think I haven't had a lot of capacity for being a very good friend or receiving from friends very well. They've changed a little bit this year. But I had the people that were close to me. I gave as much as I could. And as I'm coming out of it, I am reassessing, how do I want my deep connections to be now? Like, it's not too late. I can go back and repair. I can build new. I can restore what was or create something new. How am I re-choosing or recreating deep connections now? It was what it was, and I got what I needed, and I did or didn't get to serve other people the way that it was this last year. But that is not me forever. We are not stuck in a cemented barrier. That is the value of being able to reassess, re-choose, recreate, put words to what's actually happening. What happened before? What did we like about it? What did we not like about it? And what are we trying to build next? Is it through hospitality? Is it through showing up and serving somebody else? Is it in showing up in different ways, in a new circle? Is it willing to face our fears and to say them out loud with other people? What small step can you take today to move towards the direction you want to go? How do you get to be more honest and vulnerable with yourself? Or how do you get to show up and dig deeper with somebody else with the intention of serving them? How do you help them to be more seen or heard? And together, how are you nurturing that deeper connection? How do you get to meet each other's needs? How do you love each other the way that you are called to love each other? Come back next week and we're going to dig into it more. Have an awesome day. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Walls. If this episode inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend and leave a review. Your support helps more women step into their courage and purpose. Ready for more? Subscribe to the podcast and contact me. You can find me at beyondthewallspodcast.com. Reach out for coaching, more resources, and all the support you could need. Remember, breaking through the walls is just the beginning. Your best life is waiting.